What is up, everybody? Good morning. Welcome to Philly on PHLY. Why? It's 8 a.m. Good morning to everybody that's watching live on YouTube. Our mad chatters are already at it this morning. We're building a community of people that watch live. So watch live, get on YouTube, get involved in the chat, get involved in the conversation. It's always a lot of fun. Tyler is the moderator, so he'll toss you out. And he'll even put some good comments up on the screen during the show, like that one right there about Joel Embiid. As always, Philly with Jon Marks is presented by Bet Parks. By the way, the Eagles line is now down to 7. I was thinking it would go down a little bit. 7.5 seemed like a lot of points. So right now at Bet Parks, if you want to buy in Eagles -7 on the road on Sunday against the Cowboys, you can do it, and you can do it right now. All right, a lot to talk about here. Jim Salisbury is going to join us on the back end of the show. So 8:40, free agencies going on in Major League Baseball, general managers meetings, and the idea that Juan Soto could possibly be a Philly. I want to ask Jim, because of all the reporters, and Todd Zalecki's been on the beat for a long time. We have good Phillies reporters. I think Matt Gelb does a really good job. But Jim Salisbury is kind of the dean of the Phillies reporters, and he can cut through the BS. So I want to know if this is realistic that the Phillies are in on Juan Soto. I believe it's total BS, but we'll find out from Jim. And then there are real issues, real pressing issues with what the Phillies are going to do this offseason. So all of that with Jim Salisbury about 40 minutes from now, if you're watching live at 8:40, or if you're listening on the podcast, because yes, we do an audio version podcast. So driving into work, driving home, during your lunch hour, just search Philly with Jon Marks. Wherever you get your podcasts, give 5-star reviews, because we have a lot of them right now. Thank you to everybody for them. And you can listen at your convenience. All right, so let's start with Joel Embiid here for a second. As far as the suspension, I mean, I don't even really know what to say about it. Marcus Hayes should have never written what he wrote. He should have never included his son and his dead brother in what he was writing. I think Marcus, the writer, was trying to make his point by being really smart, because he is really smart, but it was really stupid what he wrote. And they took it down for a reason. And I know Marcus was apologetic about it or whatever. Can Joel go up and push a reporter? Of course he can't. Do I blame Joel for getting as angry as he did? I don't. But you can't push the reporter. Period. The 76ers are really at blame for all of this, because they allowed it to happen. They allowed Joel to be sitting there waiting for him to enter the locker room without really trying to set something up to where they can clear the air away from everybody. Again, the 76ers, it went from a circus to a clown show, now to a donkey show. And I think Joel Embiid is a big reason why it's turned into a donkey show. More on that in a second. But yeah, so like the suspension, he had to be suspended. You can't strike a reporter. It sucks because Marcus Hayes isn't suspended. And I'm telling you what I've seen a lot of people say. Marcus Hayes doesn't get suspended. He doesn't get in any trouble. And Joel Embiid gets suspended for 3 games. Here's the deal. You'll notice yesterday there was a story by Sam Amick from The Athletic, an NBA insider, who put out that Joel Embiid, he could return against the Clippers. There's real hope in the organization. Joel Embiid could be back tonight. And then about 3 hours later, it's announced that he's suspended. So that's clearly put out there because the 76ers are using Sam Amick to put it out there that he's ready to play. And then, he's suspended. Okay, the suspension starts tonight. Whether or not he was ready to play or not, we don't know. And you know what? You wonder if the 76ers and the NBA aren't working together in this situation, because the NBA knows it needs to suspend him. The NBA also realizes the situation that happened. And Joel was really upset by it, and he should have been, right? So he gets suspended. They can't not suspend him, but was he really ready to play tonight against the Clippers? Probably not. So he'll get the suspension. He'll return, believe it or not, against the Knicks, which would be, and it's one of these, I tweeted it yesterday because I was so excited about it. Elliott Shore-Parks out there he's so excited, but it's one of these NBA Cup games. That's who Joel Embiid will be returning. What a big game. The Knicks in October, an NBA Cup game. Unbelievable. That's a big game against the Knicks, though, so that'll be really cool for Joel Embiid at Wells Fargo Center to return. But with Joel Embiid, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, it's really frustrating for 76ers fans out there because we just want to watch them play. We just want to watch the Sixers play. We want to be entertained. When Joel Embiid is on the court, I'm entertained by the 76ers. Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, Paul George. Now your complementary players can be just that, complementary players. And you can see how this team is going to be good. But unfortunately, what we're doing with Joel Embiid is we're talking about a lot of the other stuff, all the other stuff. It's not just the injuries. It's what happens at the end of seasons, when he has weird press conferences, when his behavior is erratic, when he's an emotional roller coaster. It's everything but the game with Joel Embiid. And this training camp, after taking in all the information, where I sit right now is that the injury thing with Joel Embiid is probably mostly to blame on Joel Embiid as far as information not being put out there, as far as transparency, as far as what we knew as fans and media, to where we were kind of taken by surprise when not only did he not start the season, but he was nowhere close to starting the season. We were giving no information. He didn't talk to the media for 28 days before he finally did speak to the media. And it's not necessarily a criticism because we know the injury and we know the injury history and we know that he is sensitive when it comes to injuries. So I'm trying here with Joel Embiid. I'm really, really trying because I think he's an unbelievable talent. And the best way for the 76ers to win a championship is to figure it out with Joel Embiid. Do I think it's going to happen? I don't. But that is your best course of action right now with Joel Embiid. But Joel Embiid needs to change his mindset and needs to stop being so sensitive. Joel Embiid needs to realize, as we need to realize, fans, media, everybody, that Joel Embiid is never going to be healthy. Joel Embiid's left knee that he had meniscus surgery on last February and missed 2 months, that he had a previous surgery on before that, is never going to be completely healthy. Joel Embiid is going to be injured. That knee is going to be a problem for the rest of his NBA career in Philadelphia and after he leaves Philadelphia. It is, if he leaves Philadelphia. It's going to be. The faster and the sooner we realize that, the better. Because then the expectations can be, he may not be ready to start the regular season. He may miss a period of time during the year. We're not even talking about the other injuries, by the way. And he accumulates those injuries too. We're talking about specifically with the knee. This is going to be something that follows him for the rest of his career, and it's going to have to be managed. So back-to-backs, not likely to happen. Sorry. If you're going to buy tickets, you may not see Joel Embiid play. Back-to-backs, not likely to happen. Starts of seasons, may not be ready to go. May not be ready in the playoffs. This idea that managing Joel Embiid by not having back-to-backs and to go cautiously with him and he's going to magically be healthy in the postseason, he's not going to be healthy in the postseason. This is always going to be a part of him. Is it good enough and can he be healthy enough for the Sixers to win? I think that's where you can say yes. Managing it correctly, can his performance with the injuries, assorted injuries, including the knee, can it be good enough for the 76ers to win? Yes. But that has more to do with who his teammates are, who his coach is. Do they find some type of magical run where everything seems to be working and everybody's pulling in the same direction and that special season happens? That could happen. That's the best chance of the 76ers winning a title, is that they have a veteran that comes in and not only is he a good player, but he's the leader that they need. Because this team really needs a leader. This team needs a guy that knows how to win. Because as talented as Joel Embiid is, as talented as Paul George is, and Tyrese Maxey, they don't have a guy that's been here that's a winner, that matters. They've had players on the team. Remember PJ Tucker? The Heat beat the 76ers, and it's like, oh, we need that guy. He's tough. He's a winner. Well, they wanted P.J. Tucker out of here after a year because he couldn't play, right? So they traded him. It's one thing to be a leader. It's one thing to be a winner. It's another thing to be able to play. They need a guy that can play, that isn't worried about his stats, that doesn't have to get 20 to 25 points a game, but can get 20 to 25 points whenever he goes on the court. That's a leader. That's a winner that knows how to get these guys pulling in the same direction, because that's not going to be Joel Embiid. We may want him to be that guy. We may want him to be a lot of things. You kind of are what you are. I remember when Tiger Woods, when he was at his peak and when he was going through the whole thing with getting hit with a golf club and the Percocets and the pills and whatever else was going on, the sex addiction, right? People wanted Tiger to come out and sit down with Barbara Walters and have this really like deep one-on-one, let my guard down, let me talk about everything. And Tiger Woods was never going to be that person. Tiger Woods is what he is. He's a friggin' robot that was really good at golf. Joel Embiid is what he is at this point. He's not changing. He's good enough to win. He's talented enough to win. But he needs somebody else. This core right now of Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, and Joel Embiid, and I think Tyrese Maxey is a great player. Are they winning a championship? Probably not. They still need to add to this team. But Joel Embiid can start the process by kind of facing the fact of, hey, like, injuries are going to be a problem, and I'm working my ass off, and I want to be healthy, and I want to play. This whole notion that Joel Embiid didn't want to play, and that's bull. Joel Embiid wants to play. Is he not in 100% great shape all the time? Does he take some time off? Did he come back into camp after the Olympics? Did he put on some weight? You know what? So did a lot of other players in the NBA. He's not LeBron. He doesn't have this motor to where he's going to be Kobe, LeBron. I wish he was. That's not him. It's not him. So the quicker we realize what he is, and the quicker he realizes what he is, it's going to do everybody good, because then we can kind of move forward. Because I am so tired of talking about all this crap. I want to talk about the team. I want to complain about the players on the court. What I'd rather do. I want to celebrate wins. Now, that's Joel Embiid today, who is suspended for 3 games as we bring in Tyler Zulli, who's going to be ready with headlines coming up in a second. But it is, Tyler, I'm just ready for him to start the season and playing. And if that's going to be against the Knicks in 3 games after this suspension, I can't wait to watch him play. I also realize that he may not play more than 3 games before he has to sit down again for the management, for the load management. But I have to be okay with that going forward, or I'm going to drive myself nuts.
Well, you and I talked about it yesterday, and I kind of threw out an arbitrary number and said 60, 65 games, barring major injury, right? If there's a major injury, knee, elbow, hand, right, shoulder, whatever, there's a ton of injuries that keep you out for prolonged periods of time. But if we're talking about wear and tear type of injuries, is the arbitrary number 60 or 65? That's plenty for me, for him and this team to be competitive, to be a fairly good seed, top 4 or 5. Let's say top 4, just to get a home game, and the games 1 and games 2 at home. I think that's a fairly doable thing if he plays in a 60 to 55 to 65, but probably closer to the 62 range.
At this point, though, isn't he? He's going to miss like 11% of the season if he comes back after the suspension.
Something like that. I mean, so they're 6 games in. They'll be 9 games in by the time he's back, if he does return fresh off the heels.
60 to me would be high end of how many games he plays this year.
Okay, so if it's 50,
maybe more,
55, right? So because the conversation always surrounded itself with, can the Sixers be a 500 team without Joel Embiid? Whatever the sample size is, 15 games, 20 games, 24 games. Like, if they can go 10-10 in the 20 games he doesn't play, can they go 12-12 in the 24 games he doesn't play? I think you set yourself up for a good spot. The problem becomes they're 1-5 now in the games that he hasn't played. my worry starts to creep in is, have they buried themselves in those non-Joel Embiid games by being 4 games under 500 already? Long way to go, obviously, but there are still going to be, there's already been 6. There's probably going to be another somewhere between 6 and 15 more non-Joel Embiid games throughout the year.
Easy.
That's
without major injury.
Correct. Assuming, the wear and tear type injuries. Can they keep themselves in a 500 head above water, stay afloat mode? Now becomes a little bit more difficult now that you're 1 in 5.
Load management, you can at least say, hey, we have the Celtics coming up and the Bobcats coming up. We're going to sit them against the Bobcats. Or they're not even the Bobcats.
They're
the Hornets.
What is this, 2004?
When did they stop being the Bobcats?
Well, so I don't even think the Hornets, the current Hornets, are the Bobcats. It was remember, because there was a cycle of they went to New Orleans and became the Pelicans, and then maybe this current Hornets team is the Bobcats. I don't know.
I'm about as brain dead as I've ever been this morning. Before I go to sleep at night, the last thing I do, I kind of set up for the morning, because I fix all the kids' lunches before I go, and I fill their water cups or whatever. So, the last thing I do before I turn off the light downstairs is I go over, and there's a setting on my coffee pot, my Ninja, and I set it for 4 o'clock in the morning.
Sure.
So then it brews. And then if I don't have to get up till a little bit later, it's still hot 'cause it's in one of the cups or whatever. But I didn't put the cup down last night. So I came downstairs this morning to a travel-size mug all over, not only the counter, because it's on a slim counter, in the cabinets, because it went down and then under, on the floor, on the cabinet, soaked the whole thing. So at 4:10 this morning, I'm using a roll of paper towels. Oh, my God, man. Not a great way to start.
Good start to your day. Well, and now you're talking about the Charlotte Bobcats. So, I mean, it can't.
I know. I literally feel like I've been on I don't even know what, like a bong bender for the last 2 days, which, by the way, I haven't. I haven't done that in probably 15 years.
So,
anyway.
but your point stands, right? Does he play? So, are they going to ease him back in against some of the lesser talented teams, or are they going to sit him against the lesser talented teams and play him against the good teams?
So, which, to what you were saying, would be you can have a better record because you're sitting him against the crappy teams.
Sure.
Right? Then he plays for the Celtics. The problem is, I mean, if you can't really get on a roll because he's not playing every fourth game because of injury or because of load management, it just sucks. I don't know, man. It just sucks. I'm just so tired of having to deal with all the other nonsense. This has been going on for years with this team.
Well, and if you want to talk about, playing him versus the good teams versus not playing against the bad teams, they've lost to Detroit already, right? So they lose to the Pistons early in the season.
Yes.
Now the Bucks are 1-6. I think we all know the Bucks are a more talented team than the start that they've shown. You don't know. I don't know what their record's going to look like at the end of the year, but I would. If I had to put money on it, I would say they will.
They're an easy playoff team.
Will come out of this more than they won't come out of this. But they play the Bucks. The Bucks haven't won a game since opening night. They're 1-6 now since beating the Sixers back on October 23rd. They lose to the Bulls, the Nets, the Celtics, the Grizzlies, the Cavs twice, and the Cavs are playing incredible basketball right now. Obviously, they're undefeated at 8-0. It's
unbelievable.
But some of the teams with the lesser records right now, including the Bucks, are probably going to be a much better team, in January and in February and March.
Agreed. All right, so let's do this. Let's talk for a second, and then we'll get to the headlines with Tyler. As I told you, Tyler, I was gonna babble and ramble on about Joel Embiid, and we weren't gonna get to the Phillies and the tail end of it. So let's do it right now. Let's talk about Glatt Hair Restoration. That's right, Glatt Hair Restoration by Morgenstern Medical. Man, they're the best in the business. Most experience and most success when it comes to hair loss. And I'm currently caught in the algorithm on Instagram of every other ad or every time that I go on Instagram, it's somebody that's spraying stuff on their hair and all of a sudden they have this big afro. It's like, oh my God, it's a miracle. No, that's not a miracle. That's BS. And this isn't a miracle either with Glatt Hair Restoration. This is science. Science in 2024 can get you your hair back. And this is for all stages of hair loss. I had a hair restoration procedure because look at my hairline, it's disappearing. So I needed it. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're just starting to lose your hair and you're like, man, 5 years from now, I don't want it to look like this. When you get your license picture every couple years, I actually have to get one this year. And I remember looking at my new license picture and being like, Jesus, look at my hairline. I've lost a lot of hair in however many years it is. And like, do the same thing. Like, look at your hair. You can slow that down. And that's what Glad Hair Restoration is all about, right? Whether you really need something like hair restoration or like a lot of different options to slow it down, to stop the shedding, to stop the hair from falling out. So maybe you don't even need the hair restoration procedure. Each patient receives a complimentary one-on-one consultation to pinpoint the best course of treatment. I can just tell you, this isn't upselling. You give them a call, 610-980-4000. Glad Hair, my girls over there, the hair team, they're not going to just try to bring you in and sell you the most expensive thing that they can. Look at it. Lisa's going to look at it and say, here's what I think you should do. Because she's been doing this. They have over 30 years of experience in hair restoration. Bald's now optional. If you want to improve everything, give them a call. 610-980-4000. Email me. DM me. Slide into my DMs at Jon Marks Media, JONMARKS Media, with questions. I have before and after pictures I can literally send to you. All right, 610-980-4000. Glatt Hair, G-L-A-T Hair, MCTR.com. GlattHairMCTR.com. All right, Bet Parks. Let me just say this. Right now, it's a 7-point line. 7 points. Right now, if you like the Eagles, it's went down a little bit. Let's talk about Parks Casino, though. The Excite Center at Parks Casino, the casino of choice for me. Parks Casino, they had Sublime at the Parks Casino in September. All right, so Parks Casino, this is how you win. Number one casino, it's right there in the Philly burbs. The Excite Center is a state-of-the-art entertainment venue, named one of the best places for concerts and comedy, and a great place to see the country's best comedians and music headlines. Tickets on sale right now for these headliners. How about actor Richard Kind from Curb Your Enthusiasm? That's January 24th. Jerry Cantrell from Alice in Chains, February 8th. March 8th, magician Michael Carbonaro. Can't say I know him, but I like magicians. Comedian Ron White, March 21st. Lee Brice, country star, March 22nd. And coming up shortly on November 14th, Ezra Ray Hart, the lead singer from Sugar Ray. Better than Ezra and Tonic together. Ezra Ray Hart. The lead singers from Sugar Ray, better than Ezra and Tonic for an incredible night. Bret Michaels, November 16th. A lot. They have great restaurants there as well, drinks. And then go to the Liberty Bell Gastropub, been there many times. The Parks Grill Steakhouse, Bamboo Noodle House, or more. ParksCasino.com. Buy tickets for all shows. Parks Casino, this is how you win. You must be 21. Gambling problem. Call 1-800-GAMBLER. You know, before headlines here, and this is why we need more time on the air, because I'm in a talking mood today. So I shop at Wegmans a lot of times. I alternate between a couple different grocery stores or Target, and the playlist at Wegmans is about as good as anything I've ever heard.
Really?
You get hits from Sugar Ray. Not I Just Want to Fly. It's
every morning.
Yeah.
So that album, not that anybody cares, that album is called 1459. And I just found this out the other day. The reason they named it 1459 was because a producer told them, you guys aren't very good. You're only going to have your 15 minutes of fame. So when that album dropped and Every Morning came out and some of their other singles came out, they named it 1459 to spite that producer.
Why do you know this?
Dude, do you need to, I have a newborn. I'm sitting up watching stupid documentaries at 1 o'clock in the morning.
So it was a documentary. Gotcha.
No, it was like a YouTube. It was a YouTube video. I went down like a music YouTube, and you know what it was? It was a video on like bands that are hated, like overly hated for no reason or something, like something along those lines. And Sugar Ray was a part of it.
I'm sure they were. Yeah, all right,
and obviously you know who number one on the list was.
Nickelback.
It was Nickelback, right?
Justifiably so. Nickelback's number one on the list. I was reading a Reddit chat. Somebody posted the Spotify list of Wegmans songs. It was like a former Wegmans employee.
Okay.
So this is like a real thing where people are actually doing all of this.
So I worked in, I've told this story before, I worked at Modell's in my high school and early college years, to make some extra cash. And if you worked a long enough shift throughout the day, you would hear the same, because the playlist was so finite, you would hear the same song
what's coming
twice.
next.
Yeah, basically. The only time there was ever a wrinkle in the playlist was, a holiday time, because there would be Christmas music involved, but it would be the same, dad rock. Yacht rock and dad rock. That's the best way to describe it. It was dad rock.
Wegmans, there's a lot of yacht rock. I'm just telling you. I mean, it's
What a Fool Believes gets played a lot.
It's the modern day soft rock, because there's no real soft rock anymore.
Sure.
Right? And I'm a radio guy, so I know all the different categories of friggin' radio. All right, well, listen. Let's get the headlines about 15 minutes late today, Tyler Zulli. But hey, that's the kind of mood I'm in today. What do we got?
Yeah, let's do it. And of course, our headlines are brought to us by our friends over at the Glad Hair Restoration, because bald is now optional. And if you want to improve how you look and how you feel about yourself, Glad Hair has the right treatment for you. So regain your confidence and visit gladhairmctr.com or call 610-980-4000 to get started. So let's start with the game that happened yesterday. We'll talk more about the Sixers and the NFL trade deadline in just a little bit. But the Flyers fall to the Carolina Hurricanes last night 6-4. High-scoring affair. Carolina was up 5-4. It was actually 4-4 at one point. The Flyers tied it at 4-4. Carolina scored the fifth goal and then netted an empty netter with about 30 seconds to play to win this one 6-4. Travis Konechny, 4 points on the day, 2 goals and 2 assists. Sean Couturier with a pair of assists as well. Owen Tippett and Morgan Frost with a goal each in this one. Alexei Kolosov was okay. He gave up 5 goals on 34 shots.
A lot of shots, yeah.
A lot of shots he saw. The 5 goals on 34 shots, so he ended up with an 85 save percentage. I thought he was decent. He wasn't great, but he wasn't terrible in this one. Carolina's a really, really good hockey team right now, and it was actually the first time in 9 games that the Carolina Hurricanes gave up more than 3 goals in a game this season. They're now 9-2. The Flyers fall to 4-8-1 on this early portion of the season.
I was bouncing in and out. I saw some goals. I was happy. You know what I mean? Obviously you want wins, but you also want to see progress, and you want to be entertained when you watch games. Those first 2 weeks of the season were freaking brutal. I kept trying to tune back in. I was had my kids ready to go. It was like, this sucks. No, it was entertaining. They hung with them for a little bit.
Yeah, I think and they brought it up on the broadcast last night. JJ and Bush were talking about it, where this is a difficult stretch. I know Tampa is kind of on the downswing of what their heyday was in the late 2010s, but you have a 3-game stretch where it's Carolina, Tampa, and the defending Stanley Cup champs in Florida. And Carolina's 9-2, Tampa's 7-5, and I think Florida is like 8-3-1 or something along those lines. It's 3 difficult games in a row. They scored 4 goals. I mean, you're going to give up a ton of goals to Carolina. They're a darn good hockey team. But I will say, encouraging that they were able to put 4 past a goaltender, and a team that's been pretty good defensively throughout the first 10-plus games of the year.
And let me say this: every time I see Rod Brindamore with another organization, kind of
look at you with the hockey organization.
It kind of bothers me, because he should be a lifelong Flyer. And guys get traded. I'm not trying to say they need to play his entire career or whatever, but he was a really, really good player, and something happened with the Lindros and the Bobby Clark, and they were button heads, and maybe there's some personal stuff going on behind the scenes. But I always loved Rob Brindamore. He was always one of my favorite players, and to see the success that he's had, winning Stanley Cups. Yeah, it bothers me.
So news for the Flyers. We talked about it a little bit yesterday. Sam Ersson did travel with the team. He took some on-ice. We did some on-ice work yesterday. No timetable just yet for a return. We'll keep you updated on that. But he did travel with the team, so he may play at some point on this road trip. They have the Lightning up next tomorrow. The Lightning have lost 3 in a row. They've lost to the Wild, the Jets, and the Blues all on the road. So they have an extended home stretch after this, which starts with the Flyers tomorrow night.
All right. What else do we have?
Sixers back at it, as we talked about Joel Embiid earlier in the day, but they're back at it tonight at another late start, 10 o'clock start. Paul George makes his very quick return to L.A. as they take on the Clippers. The 3-4 L.A. Clippers host the 1-5 Philadelphia 76ers. The Clippers, as I said, 3-4 so far on the year. They did win their last time out against the Spurs, but prior to that had dropped 3 straight to the Blazers, the Suns, and the Thunder. So that one tips off at 10 o'clock tonight.
All right. Yeah, well, actually, I was meaning to look in the BetParks app at what that line was tonight. I mean, the first game, George was rusty. You saw that early. It felt like they were going to him too much down late. He had a terrible last possession. But overall, I thought they looked pretty good. They had a 9-point lead with just a couple of minutes left to go in the game. I think this is a W tonight, Tyler Zulli, for the 76ers. James Harden revenge game. It's always a revenge game for James Harden. I like him tonight. All right, anything else?
Yeah, let's talk about the NFL trade deadline really quickly, because yesterday it did come and go, and the Eagles were pretty stagnant. No moves to be made for them, but some teams did acquire some help. The Lions find a replacement for Aiden Hutchinson. They acquire edge rusher Zadarius Smith along with a 26th 7th-round pick for a 25 5th and a 26 6th-round pick. So the Browns get 2 picks in return for edge rusher Zadarius Smith. Some of the other notable moves include Marshawn Lattimore going to the Washington Commanders along with a 2025 5th. New Orleans in exchange gets a 3rd, 4th, and a 6th in this upcoming draft. So they give up a 5 in Lattimore. They get a 3, 4, and 6 in exchange. Mike Williams goes from the Jets to the Pittsburgh Steelers for a 2025 5th-round pick. The Steelers also acquire Preston Smith from the Green Bay Packers for a 2025 7th-round pick. And then one of the bigger names, or former big name, I'm not so sure he's a big name anymore, but he was really, really good with the Buffalo Bills for a while. Cornerback Tre'Davious White goes to the Baltimore Ravens in exchange for a swap of 7th-round picks. So Baltimore gets a 27th 7th, and the Rams get a 26th 7th-round pick.
Yeah, Rams were likely to release him. He wasn't playing, so it makes a lot of sense. Listen, Washington improved their secondary. It was a good move. That they're legit, and it's coming down to Washington and the Eagles for the division. For the people that were hoping for a move for the Eagles, and we're gonna have a class in realism coming up here in a second with the Phillies, but they weren't trading for Myles Garrett. They weren't trading for Max Crosby. It's unrealistic. Could the Eagles make a move in the offseason? Yeah, I mean, I don't believe they're trading for those guys in the offseason. I think it's unrealistic. But yeah, they could make a move. Howie has shown for edge rushers, for big name edge rushers, that he can make a move. I also saw something put out there by one of the insiders that there's people calling, or there's talks of Bryce Huff being. There's nobody interested in trading for Bryce Huff. That's stupid. Yeah, so Howie tells
at the production level or the contract level right now.
He's going to get 6 snaps in his last game.
Right.
All right. So he's making this is essentially a 2-year contract where the 3rd year, if you cut him, you're taking a cap hit because you guaranteed him that much money. No one wants Bryce Huff, right? So you're not trading him. So I think it was Pelissero that put it out. Stupid to even put that out there. They didn't really have where were they making a trade?
So
what position were they making a trade?
The only name that we brought up there, and there were other names, but it was auxiliary stuff. It was Khalil Herbert and some other guys.
Yeah.
But the only name that I will ask you about, because I think the price was fair in the 5th and the 6th next year. Would you have inquired about Zadarius Smith? He's probably the only one that got moved that maybe moves the needle for the Eagles.
Okay, yeah, but then who's sitting?
It's a great question, because it's probably him and Sweat, and then rotationally it's BG, and obviously they're not using Huff.
So Nolan Smith has shown real growth this year. I don't want to take snaps away from him.
Okay.
Here's your edge rushers: Josh Sweat, who's actually having a really good year.
Yeah, he's been really good lately.
Nolan Smith, Brandon Graham, Bryce Huff. Who'd be your 5th guy here? Jalix Hunt. I mean, by the way, Brandon Graham's awesome this year.
He's been really good. We've talked about it for sure.
Do you bring him in for depth? I'm fine with if you make that move. I'd be fine if you make that move. But at this point, are you not activating Bryce Huff? Howie Roseman just paid him a buttload of money. You think that he's going to bring somebody else in and sit Huff and not play him? It's bad enough he's only getting 6 snaps.
And obviously they're not going to use him on special teams. They have been using Jalix Hunt on special teams, so I assume that they're not going to hinder themselves in that department. I don't know. It's a fair question to ask. I just all the names that we saw, get moved yesterday and throughout the trade deadline, he's probably the only one that people would go, okay, for that trade value, maybe Howie would have considered. I assume Howie made a call and didn't like what they were asking for.
Here's also part of the problem. Honestly, if you want to criticize Howie Roseman, criticize him for the Dotson trade. Because you saw DeAndre Hopkins had 2 touchdowns for the Chiefs. And I think part of it is that maybe a guy like Hopkins is too big of a name that you don't want to add to Devontae and to A.J. Brown. But Dotson, and he made a great catch. That 36-yard catch that he made on Sunday was unbelievable, and you hope you see more of that. But for the most part, it's a complete dud, the trade.
Well, I think people are more upset. If you would have moved a 5th-round pick for him, you go, okay, it is what it is.
A third, you need to get a starter out of
A third is and I know that, you get to the third, it's where, toss-ups start to happen. But I think people look at a third, it's still a day 2 selection. I think that's where it maybe grinds people's gears a little bit.
He's also making first-round money that you have to pay next year. He's under contract next year. So you're paying a first-rounder. It's not making $1 million. That's at least a couple $1 million. So anyway. All right. So it came and went. The UPS driver was yet 4:30 or 3:30 was yelling at me, "Are the Birds going to make a trade?" As he was dropping stuff off. And I'm like, I was outside playing with the kids. And I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think they're going to make a trade.
Yeah, by the way, cap hit next year for Jahan Dotson is $3.2 million.
Yeah, so not crazy. But also, if the guy's not producing, that's a dead money. So you hope he's able to actually figure it out from there. All right, Jim Salisbury is going to join us coming up here in 4 minutes. Let's do this. Let's talk about our good friends at Rite Aid. That's right. I was telling Tyler before the show, daughter number 2, strep throat, amoxicillin didn't kill it. Had to go and get a different antibiotic. I pretty much live at the Rite Aid in Royersford. I do. Everybody knows me over there. They give me waves. I love going and getting deals at Rite Aids, right? All the over-the-counter stuff. Forget about the prescriptions, which is all the time. But they have good deals as well. Like sometimes there'll be a box of cereal. I'll get Lucky Charms for like $1.99, which is a great deal compared to what you'll pay at the grocery store. But Rite Aid really has it all, right? Like prescriptions. Listen, you can sign up right now. Just go to the Google Play or Apple App Store and get your Rite Aid mobile app. Transfer or refill your prescription. Set up medication reminders. Enroll in prescription notifications. Get the notification, hey, it's ready to go. Boom. So you can drive over there and you don't have to wait, right? And your pharmacist. I don't know if a lot of people realize this. The pharmacists, they go to school, so they know what the hell they're talking about. So if you're having an issue, maybe it's a little bit of a rash or like allergy season, ask the pharmacist if you have questions. They can point you in the right direction, all right? Rite Aid. It's the place I go for everything. Over-the-counter medicines, household products, cosmetics, and more. Just head to your local Rite Aid or ask your pharmacy team for details on everything. Restrictions apply. What did you just open up over there, Tyler Zulli? What are you drinking?
I was trying so hard to make that quiet, and it didn't work at all. It's a seltzer, one of the bubbly seltzers. And I think that there's just too much air in it to even remotely be quiet.
It is like you could stick it in a jacket or you open it, man. It's good.
I gotta do it at this point. Yeah, it's I don't know. It's a weird flavor combo. It's coconut pineapple, but it's really quite good.
I love coconut pineapple.
Really
one of my favorite
quite
things,
good,
man. One of my favorite things. All right, Ace Hardware Home Services. If you're a loser like me that can't do anything. I can barely. I'm proud of myself because I can actually hang a picture now, hang a photo frame. But so God forbid you have something go wrong with your heater or anything else that forget about it. That's why I need Ace Hardware Home Services. So go to acehardwarehomeservices.com to get started on your next project. A wide range of residential maintenance, installation, and home repair services are available. So we're talking about plumbing, heating, cooling, electrical. Who do you reach out to when you need something like that? Ace Hardware Home Services, because they're sending over to you somebody local, someone that you can trust, because you know with Ace that you're guaranteed. You know that they're going to do it right no matter what. They also offer emergency services when you need them the most. You're in winter, Saturday afternoon, boom, the heater goes. What do? Ace Hardware Home Services. Free estimates on equipment installation and replacement with trusted advisors and options that are best suited for your home and your budget. Service you can trust and satisfaction guaranteed. That's what you know you're getting with Ace. They'll make sure that it's right no matter what. AceHardwareHomeservices.com to get started on your next project. Tyler, let me know when Jim is there because I can talk what we're going to talk about. He is there. The great Jim Salisbury of PHLY joins us right now as the GM meetings are going on. What's going on, Jim?
I am here, John, and I too am not a very handy guy who also relies on Ace.
You're not. See, you come off to me as a guy that could fix stuff, that could maybe build something. Nothing at all.
Nothing. I can't bang a nail. I wish I had those skills. I'm pretty good in the yard. I can cut grass. I love to cut grass, and I
Me
love to
too.
garden. But it doesn't extend to any mechanical or carpentry or construction. I'm really very poor at that.
But you're good at it with a typewriter. Did you use a typewriter in your writing career at one point?
No, no.
Oh, damn.
That's a great question. I was in college when the word processor and the floppy disk were just starting,
Right.
and I was an English major, so actually remember, like in college, like trying to seek out a typewriter, like my freshman year, and then I started working part time at the local newspaper, and they had these things called word processors. So I would
Right.
sneak in late at night and write all my papers on their word processors.
I had a word processor as well. I remember I think I might have been in just beginning high school, and
Yeah.
it worked very well. So so how many GM meetings did you attend in your career as a baseball writer? This was pretty much an every year type thing for you?
Yeah, I probably did 25 of them. And when I started doing them, they were not real big. It was just a handful of guys, and it was a real low key environment. You could really bond with. You really get some FaceTime with GMs and some agents. Like I remember the one where they started to pursue Jim Thome. I think it was 2003. They were in Tucson, and it was a very small, intimate event. It wasn't really even an official event. I think it was like the first year they had a media workroom. And I remember, speaking to Ed Wade at that GM meetings, and they rolled out an offer to Jim Thome at midnight. But over the years, they became like a mini winter meetings. They just got more and more media attention, and all of a sudden they became like a formal event with formal availabilities and whatnot. But when they started, it was not like that. So I did many of them, and some were a whole lot of nothing, a lot of yawning. But some you get, Pat Gillick walking by you in the lobby, and this actually happened. Hey Pat, you got a minute? Anything cooking? Not really, but hang around. I might have something for you later tonight. So he had something. He traded for Brad Lidge later that night. So you never know. Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. So it kind of answers my next question, which is, what is Dave Dombrowski doing? Because that I always hear. I remember like Jason Stark and some other writers would talk about, you kind of just stand in the lobby and you have this GM walking by, Scott Boras walks by, this GM walks by, so you're kind of sitting there hoping to catch one of the guys and ask him what's going on. So what is Dave Dombrowski doing right now? Is he talking with agents? Is he talking with general managers? What does a GM in baseball do at these meetings?
These meetings are actually pretty busy for the GMs and the executives. They have a lot of formal meetings about, rules and policy, and they review the previous season, and they have what they, call arbitration meetings where they go over potential figures for guys. So their days are at least their mornings are pretty locked up with official MLB type business meetings. And, these are not designed to come and talk about trades, but they will, get together later in the day, come to my suite, I'll meet you for a coffee, or they go out and play golf, and they kind of, because it's so early in the offseason, they can lay the groundwork face to face for possibly future transactions with another GM. So they are busy, and they bring, 3 or 4 of their lieutenants, and they have all kinds of meetings. So maybe not, at the winter meetings, I don't think there's as many official meetings. They tend to be more ceremonial. So I think guys can really focus on trade talks and whatnot. But in a lot of ways, in terms of trades and transactions, both of these meetings are, largely unnecessary to facilitate trades. It used to be that you needed to FaceTime with guys, but the GM fraternity and the president of baseball ops fraternity has gotten so much smaller with the advent of cell phones and texting, and all these guys grew up in the texting generation, and they can consummate a deal over the phone or through text or through many ways of communications, where once upon a time it used to be, they wanted to get face to face and look at each other. A lot of it has changed. I think there's always a lot of attention paid to these meetings, but sometimes there's an inordinate amount of attention in terms of what you see for actual action.
It's a good answer. It's some real good insight because you're right. These guys they just text each other. Right?
Yeah.
You don't need to necessarily have the face-to-face meeting. All right, so I'll keep it like this, and I'll maybe mention names when I'm not on with you. But there are some reporters out there that are known to maybe peddle some information for Scott Boras clients or put out information for Scott Boras clients. Juan Soto, to me, is the next in that line of, hey, let's get the name out there. Let's stir the pot. Let's get everybody involved. So now you're seeing some reports of the Phillies very much interested in Juan Soto. How serious do you believe, Jim Salisbury, the Phillies have interest, or how serious is the Phillies' interest in signing Juan Soto in free agency?
Yeah, I think we get a lot this time of year into words and semantics and meaning. Phillies are expected. Okay, well, really, what does that mean? Phillies have interest. Okay, what does that mean? Of course the Phillies have interest in Juan Soto. Wouldn't you have interest in Juan Soto? I'm sure the Chicago White Sox, as crappy as they are, have interest in Juan Soto. Wow, what would he look like in our uniform? But taking that interest in actually fitting that guy for a uniform and actually writing a contract is a whole different matter. So, look, the Phillies are a big market team. They act like a big market team. They spend like a big market team. I've had conversations over the years with John Middleton where he says, if there's a top free agent out there that could help us, you bet your butt we're going to be talking about it. We're going to be pursuing that guy. So in that regard, yeah, I think they're interested in Soto. Do I think they'll talk to Scott Boras? Absolutely, they'll talk to Scott Boras. They have a great relationship with Scott Boras. Their clubhouse is loaded with Scott Boras clients. They've done big deals with Scott Boras before. So they'll talk to him. They'll gauge the market. Just in case he looks him in the eye and says, I really want to be a Philly, which I don't see that happening. But, where they are, they have two $300 million players already. They have some $100 million players. They have guys due raises. They have luxury tax concerns and luxury tax bills. I don't think you can sign a $300 million player every year. And, oh, by the way, this is probably going to be a $600 million player. So I think they'll do their due diligence. In the end, I just don't see it being a fit. I mean, it would be a great baseball fit, but I don't see it being a payroll fit or a financial fit just for where they are. They've done so many big things recently. I don't know that they can do another, the biggest thing ever, maybe, in terms of present day value this winter. So, again, yeah, they'll be connected to him because of who they are and what they've done in the past, and it behooves the agent, who in this case Scott Boras, to get them involved and get people thinking. But John, the Phillies, I was thinking about this the other day. Whenever they make, and they've made some big moves, but whenever they make some big transactions, we kind of get a vibe that it's pointing this way. And that goes back for me to Jim Thome. You got a definitive vibe that they wanted Jim Thome. Roy Halladay was a different kind of transaction. It was a trade, but you got a definitive vibe they wanted him.
Yeah,
Cliff Lee, the second time when he came back, was a free agent, and you kind of got the vibe they wanted him. When Harper and Machado hit the market, you got the vibe they were going to go after one of these guys and get one of them. Zach Wheeler was a big deal, but I mean, coming out of right into the offseason that year, you got the vibe that, yeah, they wanted Zach Wheeler. And all of these things in a way have come to fruition. I just don't get that vibe that Juan Soto is going to be a Philly. It's a situation worth watching, but I just don't know that they can get it to the finish line where they are payroll-wise, where they are in terms of the luxury tax. Signing him probably takes you over the fourth luxury tax threshold, which are massive penalties of like above $40 million. And plus, it hits into your international draft money. It hits into your draft order, where these are important things to a team that needs to build from within. And then you have the whole thing with, the two New York teams are in it, and he's going to be awfully expensive. You look at Aaron Judge, who has like a $40 million, is it 40? I think it's $40 million AAV for a position guy. And then you look at Ohtani, who I think his AAV is like 46 million, but obviously, and that's in present day value.
Right.
But obviously he's a two-way player. I think this guy's going to want definitely to blow away Judge and probably Ohtani too. And I'm just not sure that the Phillies, where they are, can do another deal like that. And by the way, it's not even a deal like that. It's twice as much as Bryce Harper, and Bryce Harper made all our drawers hit the ground.
Yeah, Jim's a lot more thoughtful for me. That's code for it ain't happening. And Juan Soto is not coming to Philadelphia. And listen, Jim, I did sports radio for 2 decades. And when you have to fill 4 hours a day, you can have fun conversations like that because it's not, is it realistic to happen? Which it's not. It's should the Phillies do it? Looking from that, I think it's an interesting conversation. But I'm assuming Dave Dombrowski, Jim, is more interested in his realistic moves. What are they going to do with a trade? You've also seen this coming up in the last few days, talking about Castellanos, Bohm, or Marsh possibly being moved in a deal. Who do you believe is most likely to be traded, and do you expect one of the regulars for the Phillies to be traded this offseason?
And real quick, I'm just going to double back. You mentioned Dombrowski, and he was on record at the closing press conference saying he thinks they have a good ball club, a good nucleus, and they probably don't need another star. To me, that's also code for the Juan Soto probably not happening.
That was no, Jim, you're right. That was the answer, and I've talked about that. Yeah. Dave is a straight shooter for the most part. A lot of people said, "Oh, well, he's not going to show his hand." That's not really Dave Dombrowski. He's answered questions before, like when Snell was available in spring training still, and it's like, well, yeah, he's like, we're not adding another starting pitcher. Like he wouldn't even entertain it. So yeah. I agree with you. That answer was we're not signing. Soto's not coming to Philadelphia. He's not leaving New York unless there's a team like the Giants or one of the other big teams that decide we can't not have this guy. And then Boris is going to get what he's looking at, which is probably $50 million a year.
Yeah. But to get back to your, I agree. I don't think he's coming here either. Let's get on to the real pressing issues for this ball club.
Right.
And you mentioned, do I think he could make a trade from a regular player? Yeah, I think they might have to. I think they're going to have to do some work on the free agent side, not necessarily at the top end of the market, and they're going to have to probably possibly move some value off their roster to fill some holes. So, yeah, we hear Castellanos, and we hear Bohm. To me, Bohm, I'm not really in favor of trading Bohm. I think he's a good player. He drove in 97 runs, and that was with a month where he drove in just 3, and that was with a terrible September as well.
And he was injured too.
I think he's a good player. I think he's an ascending player. I think he's getting better, and he showed a lot of frustration down the stretch, and I think that probably got under some people's skin. But I'm not sure that his name is floating out there because they're looking to get rid of him. I think it's probably out there because he's, still 2 years away from free agency. He's a productive player. He's a good player. He's got value. He might be able to bring you something back. So we haven't, I'm not sure why we don't hear maybe about Stott. He's also a young player I think has value. I wonder, though, if they're, maybe be more protective of him because who knows about Trey Turner's future at shortstop. He has not looked good there for spells. Maybe he's your insurance at shortstop. I don't know, but they talk about Castellanos. I mean, I would listen on all those guys. I would listen on Stott. I would listen on Bohm because those are 2 young guys with value. So you get something good, but I'd have to get something good for both guys. I mean, Castellanos, they floated his name out there. They had conversations about him last year. There was no interest. Maybe it changes with a more productive 24 and the fact that he's got $20 million more off the books. So he's only owed $40 million over the next 2 seasons. Maybe you eat some of that and to facilitate a move, save some payroll because, they have a big need to me in left field. They, to me, have a need in center field, depending on what they do with Marsh, Rojas, platoon, or maybe it's just a platoon guy. But I think they have a big need to get a bat in left field. And I think they have 2 big needs in the bullpen, and they have needs at the back of the rotation. So it's going to take, they're going to have to spend some free agent dollars to sign, to fill these holes. And they're probably going to have to make a trade. Infield is a spot maybe where you could make a trade from because you do have some It's probably the strength of your farm system. You got Aiden Miller coming, who can play anywhere in the infield. Preston Mattingly last week said they're going to start looking at him a little bit at second base. I mean, what does that tell you? So that they might be open to all sorts of things here. So, yeah, I think they could move one of those guys. I just hope they get really, really good value for Alec Bohm, because I hope he got a little frustrated at the end of the season. I hope they're not just, throwing him away and giving up on him. And I don't think that is the case. I think they know he's a good player. But, moving somebody like Castellanos would maybe free up a little payroll, allow you to do some other things. And to me, you got to get a left fielder too. You got to get a left fielder who can hit, who can not chase and drive in runs and hit for some pop. I mean, this is Citizens Bank Park. You got to hit for pop in this place,
Well, it's part of the problem. You move on from Castellanos, who replaces him. You say what you want about him, Jim, and actually,
he really
was good. He was good last year.
Yeah, I don't know. You're down to 2 years. I wouldn't give him away either. But somebody might look at him as a veteran bat who had those 4 really good months. I think those are your most tradable guys. You're not going to trade Schwarber. I mean, obviously Harper and Turner are not going anywhere. I don't think at this stage of his career, JT is going to be a trade guy. I wonder if they'd listen on Ranger. I certainly would.
Took my next question. Last time I was on with you, you floated that because he's a free agent after this year. He's going to make, I think I saw $11 million.
Yeah,
is what his final year of arbitration is projected to be. If you're not going to re-sign him, which it feels like they're not going to overspend to keep him, and the price of starting pitching out there in free agency, Jim, big money. He's going to get. I mean, Nick Pivetta is going to make $60 million on a couple year contract. Do you think about moving him and then you sign a veteran like a Verlander, for lack of a better, but you sign a veteran on a 1 year contract that you hope can be a 3 or 4 or a 5, and then you go with it? Because Ranger's a good pitcher. I would have interest in Ranger Suarez if I was a team that needed a starter.
I think you have to entertain all those creative options, and I would listen on Ranger. His second half, his conditioning, it gives me pause about whether I want to do something long term with him. I mean, he was on the verge of. We were talking about him as a Cy Young candidate, 8 or 9 weeks into the season. And I'm sure up on the 4th floor at Citizens Bank Park, they were talking about, wow, he's a year away from free agency. We're going to have to do something with this guy. Well, that second half, that injury, it put those thoughts out the window. So they're going to need to see more of him before they decide to commit, and maybe even they don't. So, I mean, some of those veteran names, I do find intriguing on a 1 year deal if the expectations are low, and obviously this, it's affordable because you're not going to be thinking of these guys as aiding guys. You're thinking of them as back of the rotation, give you 5, give you 6. They need a closer.
Next question. Yes, that's my next question.
Yeah, they need a closer. I don't think they'll bring back both Hoffman and Estevez.
All right, so let me ask the question and get your answer. All right, Jeff Hoffman, Carlos Estevez. The projected contract that I saw, ESPN had projected contract of Hoffman 3 for 48, for Estevez 3 for 36. I know fans want the Phillies to have a bottomless payroll, and they spend a ton of money. They always have. I don't know if you can bring both back. So is one of them coming back? Is it possible both comes back? And who do you think comes back from the two? Who's most likely to come back from the two?
I think Hoffman, and then they helped put him on the map. It was a really mutually beneficial relationship. They helped him. I think their pitching staff helped him, and he helped the Phillies as well. I wonder if his struggles in the cauldron of the postseason this year would give them some pause. He's going to get paid, and I think they have budgetary concerns because they're really creeping up. They're going to be they're already projecting to be over the second luxury tax with just normal raises and the additions they need to make. They're going to probably be over the third tax. So I think maybe Estevez might make some more sense. I'm not sure he'd require a 3-year deal if you held tight. But there are guys out there. Clay Holmes is out there. I think you can maybe throw some things at the wall, maybe a couple of veterans, like if a guy like Kirby Yates. I'm not saying you're going to take him and pencil him in as your closer, but they need guys in the 7th and 8th too. I think there are options. I would probably say definitely not bringing back both guys. And if it was one of them, I think they might lean more toward Estevez. They gave up two, pretty good arms to get him. I think they might like to get him back. But, Holmes is out there. I mean, there's a lot of – Blake Trinan is a guy
and
I
real
like.
fast, Jim, I got to give a shout out to our diehards out there. Thank you, diehards. But yeah, I mean, it's to me, Estevez can be a closer. Jeff Hoffman hasn't shown to me he can be a closer. He can pitch the 7th or 8th inning and he can be dominant at times. But if it's not costing as much money, if you wait out the market, you might get him on a 2-year deal for $20, $22, $24 million. And to me, Hoffman's going to get overpaid. And I actually saw there was some chatter that maybe he's being viewed as a potential getting back to being a starter. He was a starter before he came to Philly. He was drafted in the first round as a starter. They had to convert him. I think he's still most likely a bullpen piece, but I'm not paying my 8th inning guy $15 or $16 million a year. I mean,
well, it's crazy money out there, but I do think they need two arms out there that they can depend on, and then maybe even more around the fringes. But this team has some holes to fill: bullpen, back of the rotation, depth, and left field. I mean, I talked about this trade deadline. I really like Tyler O'Neill. The Red Sox made that little. I know you got to go. That little run at the season. It didn't move him, but he's a guy. He's a guy I like. So we will see. They need to make additions, and Dombrowski's a guy who will strike quick if he gets something he likes. So I would have your antennae up. You never know, but the way the off seasons have evolved, now we see them go right into February and sometimes into March. So.
No, I was actually I have an Apple Watch. So a text came up from Tyler that had Tyler. Why don't you throw it at Jim because it's a good question. See, I remember Pat Gillick, Jim. He didn't like to give relievers long-term contracts because he felt like they were year to year. So a guy that might be dominant this year might be designated for assignment next year. It's like field goal kickers in the NFL. And to me, it feels like Dombrowski. Good GMs should be able to find guys year to year. You should be able to find a 1-year contract, a veteran guy that can be a 7th inning guy or an 8th inning guy, as opposed to giving a $50 million contract to somebody you picked up off of waivers.
Especially with relievers because they're so up and down from year to year. Look at the guy who was closing for the Yankees. I mean, so they can find. They have huge staffs. These front offices that are digging into all these. Off the radar numbers and trying to project guys who's going to be that breakout guy or that, kind of lightning in a bottle guy. So, yeah, they need to find something like that. Like they did with Jeff Hoffman.
Yep. They need the Jeff. Tyler, what do you got for Jim?
Yeah, so Jim, I'm glad you brought that up because one of the names I've been thinking about for a while, and he hasn't pitched a full year in almost 2 seasons. He's coming off a pretty substantial injury, is a guy like Jonathan Loaisiga. Is there concern? Like, would you take a flyer on that type of player, a guy who has had a little bit of a track record of injury, but the stuff is there, and you take a flyer on him and get him on a 1-year deal and try to kind of pull a Jeff Hoffman type of thing?
No question, I would take a shot, especially on a 1-year deal. A 1-year deal never killed anybody. You got a guy coming off injury, you always take a shot. Look at Trinan out in L.A. coming off pretty serious injury. And he gets it back this year. So yeah, those are the type of guys. But I do think you need a sure thing out there that you can really depend on, or two, and then you take some kind of around the edges 1-year deals and see what you can get. But I think that's a good name. That's a type of organizational inventory that you need to bring in either on a minor league deal or a 1-year deal and see what happens. We see it every year that somebody bullpens all over baseball have a guy that you didn't expect all of a sudden stepping up and taking down big innings and pitching in some leverage for you. So that's what the Phillies need. I'm sure they're looking at names like that. They dig into all this stuff.
Jim, as always, thank you. Great stuff. Always love talking to you. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks. There he is, Jim Salisbury. Great stuff. Yep, he told you. Phillies ain't in on Soto. Sorry. I hate to be the wet blanket. I don't work in sports radio anymore. I don't have to do the pretend game. I'm limited on the time that I can talk about, so I'm not going to pretend that they're going to sign Juan Soto. Should they sign Juan Soto? No. No, it's just not realistic enough to talk about. Here's the reality. The Trey Turner contract is now handcuffed you. It's tough to add until you get some money off the books. And like, what, you're going to get rid of Schwarber? You're not going to re-sign JT? I mean, they have a lot of tough decisions coming up. They do. But at least on this show, we're going to start focusing on realistic things the Phillies could do. And if it becomes where they're actually in on Soto, then we'll talk about it. I just think Mike Trout to the Phillies has a better chance of happening, much better chance of happening than Juan Soto. And I don't think that is a chance of happening. And I don't want it to happen either. But there you go. We thank Jim for all that. Well, Tyler, it's the end of another show. We thank all the good people out there, the Mad Chatters. Thank you very much, Mad Chatters. Good show. If you're listening on podcast, the audio version, Tyler gets it up every day, about 9 o'clock, a little later today. So, check us out on the audio podcast. Just search Philly with Jon Marks, wherever you get your podcasts. And also YouTube, Roku TV. If you have that, you can view us in many, many different ways. So thank you. Tomorrow on the show, Angelo Cataldi joins us to talk about Joel Embiid, how the 76ers have handled that, and anything else that we talk about. Angelo tomorrow. Click over to Anthony. He is live right now. Talk to you tomorrow. See you.
We all silly like the mayor.